In the 1930s, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt addressed the nation through a series of radio broadcasts known as the Fireside Chats. His aim was to reassure the common man that our society would recover from its troubled times. But we're far from 1930, and I deal with a different kind of fire. For a new era of worldly frustration, we offer a fresh conversation. I'm Greg Carlwood, and these are the Higher Side Chats.
Wow, Higher Side Chatters. Just wow. Welcome to THC, drinking a little drink, smoking a little smoke from sunny San Diego. I'm Greg Carlwood, fresh off the Don Peyote tour bus with Dan Fogler, Freeman Fly, Jamie Hanshaw, and Ron Patton of Paranoia Magazine. It was an amazing adventure. I tripped acid for the first time in the Redwoods of Big Sur, which went to some scary places after between 4 and 5 hits, depending on how you score it. It was wild, and I went to hell and back, quite honestly, people. But there are so many great stories and videos from the trip, and I think I'm going to try and put a little video together where I can really go through the details of it. It should be fun. But I know you people have been hungry for a new show, and I'm sorry I broke my every 5-day covenant so soon, but it really was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing, and I needed to get out of the house. But here we are, you lovely party people, and a great talk with Xaviant Haze, who's written extensively about the Shemsu Hor, who just might be the first secret society behind ancient Egypt, possibly Reptilian even. He has also investigated the claims of fuckery surrounding the deaths of Elvis and Michael Jackson and made some really interesting connections that we touched on in the second half of the show. But I love this interview, and I love this book and the subject matter, so I hope you enjoy, people. We have a money bomb next episode, so get those donations in. We're slightly behind where I'd like to be, but another 100 or so would really get us pretty much there. So consider throwing down, and hopefully you'll be this round's winner, or at least contribute to someone else's needs who we'll talk to on the next show. Also consider the new subscription tab where you can donate $5, $10, or $20 monthly. I know this is a huge deal. It would be amazing for people to do that, but there are a lot of shows out there that are $5 or $10 a month just to get access to the stuff that I already give you. So consider that if you're able and willing. So let's do this, people. Reptilians, Akhenaten, Elvis, Michael Jackson, the Martian materials and the Great Pyramids of Egypt, dinosaurs, the Shemsu Hor, and much more. And I'll see you on the other side. Alright, people, if you're paying attention, it should be obvious that the ruling elite have been carefully crafting a framework of reality that reduces people to mere hamsters on the unfulfilling wheel of economic slavery and total thought control. But many people wonder where this all began, and though it's hard to get a conclusive answer from a notoriously secret cabal, many of their symbols and tributes lead one to suggest something about ancient Egypt is very important. Well, today's guest, Xaviant Haze, has written a book entitled Aliens in Ancient Egypt, The Brotherhood of the Serpent, and the Secrets of the Nile Civilization that follows these breadcrumbs back to the original secret society that today's elite might still be emulating. And stranger still, they may have learned their techniques for controlling from the background from an otherworldly species of reptilians. I love the book, and I'm psyched to have him here. Xaviant Haze, how the hell are you, man?
Doing pretty good. How is it going there in California?
Excellent, man. Never better. I can never complain about sunny San Diego. But man, I really did enjoy the book, and it goes in quite a few places that I wouldn't have thought. But to get us started, let's dive into ancient Egypt. I've had many guests from many different weird areas of life, and whether you're talking about occult magicians or Freemasons or Bilderberg journalists, if you follow some of this modern fringe material back, all these subjects that seem wildly different lead back to ancient Egypt. So clearly something's up. But let's try to walk through some of this chronologically, man. Before the Shemsu Hor, which we're definitely going to talk about, things seemed to be going pretty well in Egypt, didn't they?
Well, yeah, Egypt, as we know, was the root of most what we refer to as occult knowledge, and most all of the symbolism used by the Illuminati and secret societies through the ages stems from this culture. So if we can say that it was going very well before the Shemsu Hor period, that's debatable, because what we know of the actual Egyptian, the pyramids and the Giza Hill, all that's way before. So the Egyptians themselves left records, and they inherited this high advanced degree of civilization.
Right. When I think about Egypt as we know it, the time of pharaohs and all the symbols we see, it seems to be that's where civilization picked up after this big cataclysm, which I've heard you say before, and a lot of guests suggest, and I'm inclined to think that, as time is secular, it seems like disasters, cataclysms happen throughout history. It's just kind of something that happens, and it seems like the last one that everyone talks about was a big flood, and Egypt seems to be, the setup of society post-flood. I mean, is that pretty accurate?
Absolutely, because before the flood, there was other golden ages, and who's to say how old? Definitely,
right.
The pyramids weren't built. It has tombs for the pharaoh Khufu. That's ridiculous. After the flood, like everything else, right? You rebuild, and it takes hundreds of thousands of years to get up to speed to everything. But we do know that the pyramids themselves, when the first explorers in the early 1800s started coming over and going into the pyramids, Alfred Watkins and some of the preeminent scholars from England, they found evidence of seawater, salt, encrusted within the pyramids, detailing that they had been submerged. And you could find all kinds of seashells and stuff.
And that's something I was curious about, because the pyramids, there's a lot of debate over when they were built and why they were built. And you seem to think that it was, at least in this previous golden age, and that it was built with more of a positive purpose in mind, right?
Yeah, and it's funny because they just had a whole new, like last week, a new article talking about, we think we know how the pyramids were built with like wet sand and this and that, and all, which is fun, but they don't explain the massive megalithic blocks that make up the core of these crazy structures. They never seem to mention that part. I think there's been plenty of lost world type Atlantean type civilizations, more than one for sure, and maybe even of different species as well. We're barely starting to understand who we are. I mean, we're to the point now where the awakening has come so fast, right?
Right.
And this goes into the elite plans, like the Archons or Illuminati or whatever you want to call them. Their goal is to turn, because they're not really human, they hate us. I'm convinced 100% that it's an alien presence that's not human at all. It's not concerned with the soul.
Right.
And they're trying to steer us towards the transhumanist agenda, right? So we happen to be in this path where right in the middle of the global awakening and being on the precipice of this transhumanist transformation, that we have the ability to actually stop or delay this old ancient plan.
Right. Well, I wanted to talk about the purpose of the pyramids, because I've heard a lot of different claims, everything from it simulated a psychedelic out-of-body experience for those who took some type of initiation, and then I've heard people suggest it was a free energy device. But, in the book, you talk about it being, you think it was there to raise the consciousness level of the people. Maybe it emitted some type of frequency that was more harmonic. But what brought you to that type of conclusion? Because I'm really curious about what the pyramids were for.
Yeah, I think it's a twofold question, twofold answer, excuse me. The purpose, I think maybe initially, eons ago, because I think as long as the land formations have remained this way, with this where the Giza Plateau is, where that field is, just being situated perfectly, like everywhere. I think there's always been some sort of pyramid field or pyramid structure there, no matter how millions of years back. It could be seen from space as well, so you have, even maybe if there was a beam of light or something, sort of like a homing device for other species when they entered the solar system. I think later on, it became more of a universe, a field, like the pyramid field became a machine, of course, but to uplift consciousness, to keep man elevated during times of the Silver Age and the descending, And I think it all works with the way the water is and the way the different stones and the quartz crystals and, even Christopher Dunn has shown how, certain, like insulin, certain parts of the pyramid act like insulin for electricity. And I think that's what it was. And unfortunately, it decommissioned after the last great flood.
Yeah. I'll always be fascinated with the Great Pyramids. I mean, they're definitely interesting, and I had never really been sure how they were made, and I'm still not, but when I read Philip Coppen's last book, and I never really got to talk about this much on the air because I had Philip on once before, and we had kept in touch, and he sent me his next book that he had wrote. We scheduled the interview, and just a few minutes before, he calls and says that he can't do it because he hasn't been feeling well, and he's on his way to urgent care. Well, I guess he was diagnosed with cancer at that point, and he never really came back out of the hospital, and he died there. Definitely sad and a tragic loss, but in that book, he sold me on the building methods of the pyramids being something called geopolymers, and you wrote about it a bit too. And can you tell the people what that is? It's kind of like concrete, right? But it's a more advanced form.
Yeah, it's a form of concrete for sure, but it's the way it's what makes it interesting is that what the geopolymers in this formula, they have a mass abundance that's only found on Mars, so it's kind of strange.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's that about? And then what does Cairo mean Mars? And plus all the other weird stuff about the red planet that we're just kind of, it looks like the remnants of a civilization that was destroyed,
It does. And so
it's crazy. So yeah, I think, and Philip, I was speaking with him too before he passed. I didn't get to talk to him as much as I wanted to, unfortunately. But yeah, that and I think I might even learn that from him as well, because that's the work of a French geologist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, definitely, and that's some stuff they've been suppressing for a while.
So yeah, the mentioning of these, the composition of some of the materials and the stones that were used are more common with rocks from Mars. Like, that is super fascinating, and it's hard to really reconcile that with our current conventional viewing of history. So, I mean, is it these elements that are in the rocks, or these types of rocks, the composition, is it not found anywhere on the Earth? Is it pretty conclusive that they are Martian rocks, or is it not quite that obvious?
Yeah, it's not as abundant, actually. And this is from NASA reports, which is even stranger,
Right.
So it seems to be that to be able to make the concrete with the megalithic block building, somehow they're able to, make this concrete with this abundance, like this Martian silica. And it's obvious that it would make sense if it was dematerialized to the point where it was softened and then formed back in shit. Because and you can see this in Peru, in Egypt. There's a few places where you could see the rocks look like locking together. Like these megalithic stones, like locking together perfectly. You can't even fit a hair through, and it absolutely makes no sense at all. It's like Play-Doh or something. It just defies logic. So, and the fact that these things exist in the earth and they're not concerned to the point of having massive press conferences and trying to figure out how this was done is really, really upsetting.
So yeah, we have this time, this golden age before this flood, where people are building structures that are using technologies we don't have today, or supposedly don't have today. They're using rocks from another planet, which seems foreign to us in 2014. How that could be possible? I mean, it seems like wild times, man. And this is all this technology, this ability to do such things. I mean, this is all speculated to be handed down to us from some non-human species, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There was an alien element in ancient times. I mean, maybe even 2 or 3, who knows? But yeah, for sure, because all the records, they're all fascinated and obsessed with flying vehicles and the Vimanas, and as the Hindu and the ancient Indian texts talk about. It's when Columbus came, the first questions the Indians asked him was, are you from the sky?
Yeah.
So, what is this exception? It's insane.
And this is an interesting time, this like flood time, because this is when many native cultures, you know, the Hindu, the Hopi, the Mayans, Amazonian tribes, we hear these stories of other beings taking these groups of people deep inside caves and caverns and helping them wait it out before taking them back to the surface. I mean, it's kind of weird that different pockets of civilization from other sides of the globe have these similar stories. You know, that's pretty trippy.
Yeah, and then you have all the underground cave systems that are found all over the world too.
Yeah.
Tunnel systems in Turkey and South America, and even when I talk about the Reptilian, the whole mythology of G.I. Joe is actually, it was about all of this. It's kind of funny, you know.
Right.
Serpent, or the Cobra,
Commander.
Also thanks for subliminally implanting that into my 5-year-old mind. But
yeah, me too.
So, but I talk about the interesting aspect of that theory as related to the Shemsu Hor, ancient Egypt, in that the Reptilian, let's just say, like some of the Jewish mythologies, they talk about the Adam and Eve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Adam and Eve myth. Now, one of the Jewish texts talks about, that the serpent wasn't, on the ground. He was actually upright, walking, and intelligent. And a lot of other mythologies, like in the Mayans, also talk about the upright, intelligent, walking serpent, giving them knowledge as well. So here, in this ancient Hebrew text, talks about, the upright, intelligent serpentine being who was the first to have been given the knowledge, right,
mm-hmm.
of the aliens or the Elohim, or whatever you want to call them. And then at one point, he rebelled, and he made Adam and Eve aware of what was going on.
Right.
With the fruit of knowledge, So he was chopped up. And like his limbs, and like the symbol they use, like he was punished for cut his legs and arms off, and the slither on his belly for his life.
Right.
To go underground, right? So, that the idea of the upright walking serpent is prevalent in all cultures in ancient times, and who's to say that it didn't evolve here as well? There could be. There's a geologist. Dr. Russell, I don't know his first name, when he talks about the Troodon dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
How the Troodon dinosaur had the biggest brain of all the dinosaurs at that point in time. And if it had survived the extinction level, whatever the comment was supposed to be about the dinosaurs, which didn't wipe everything out, because we still have, lizards and Komodo dragons and weird stuff like
exactly,
that.
Exactly, yeah.
So, say for a chance that the Troodon dinosaur survived all that. That means just with evolution, his brain would have advanced rapidly than any humanoid or anything else we ever seen. Who's to say that it couldn't have gained intelligence on its own, or had been visited by another species, or even another reptilian race? Because they're starting to figure out that if life evolves on other planets, like the first thing that will probably evolve will be reptilians. Right? I mean, the stem of our brain is reptilian.
Yeah, if they're the oldest, it would only make sense that they would evolve first.
Exactly. So who's to say that these didn't, So you don't necessarily have to look to an outside alien race, to talk about the reptilians. You just talk about they could have evolved here, and then maybe they got some knowledge from a visiting race. Who's to say?
Yeah, that's a great point.
The truth is, right, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. Everyone here that was not there, so you can't say it's right or wrong, but it's interesting to theorize and just talk and shoot the crap about it, and, just to build. And I think that's what's important, is not to say you're crazy or this and that. It's to, say, no, you're crazy because you only believe one certain thing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to flesh out this story a little more, the flood ushers in this dark age and thrusts humanity into chaos, and then we find civilization is rebooted in ancient Egypt, and we have the earliest writings of the first pharaoh, and this is kind of seems where the Shemsu Hor enter the story, at least in the forefront. Maybe they are maybe they go back farther than humanity goes back, but this is kind of where, as far as the modern age, since the flood, it seems like they had an influence in this first Egyptian society. Are they the ones who structured it with banks and pharaohs and priest classes and courts?
Yeah, I believe that the pharaoh, who himself claims to be related to God, part of the sky god, and even in the, what's funny is that you want to be an Egyptologist, right? So you spend 4 years, and, study this history of Egypt, and you're basically going off the Mummification list, and that basically says that's the king's list, the pharaonic king's list. However, through the Palermo stone and other tablets found in Syria, it's basically confirmed that the king's list also has the ancient, like pre-pharaonic sky gods king's list as well, that they don't bother to tell you about.
Right.
Like you teach it from here, but don't worry about that. So like it's all over in the records in ancient Egypt. So yes, let's ask your question again.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the structures that they put in place for their society are the same structures we have now in ours, banks and priest classes and courts. And this is the type of structure that kind of keeps the common man down and keeps the common man in line. And, it's interesting that you can trace this back to these Shemsu Hor, which seem to be one of the first secret societies, one of the first organizations to rule from the shadows, while people are given a figurehead leader like a pharaoh or a president. And
exactly.
Yeah, it just seems like we're modeling after that group.
Exactly. The Babylon banking system hasn't changed in 5,000 years. They come in, they came in at a time, most prevalently during Akhenaten's great-grandfather's time, Thutmose III, who had a UFO encounter and, wrote about it. And it's there. On the temple walls, they suppress it. The Tuli Pyrus, which supposedly talks about it. Governments have, been killing each other for decades, trying to figure this out and root down the exact copy of it. But we know for sure that there was this encounter, and when the Shemsu Hor comes in, they go behind the scenes, right? So it's the pharaoh is the puppet leader, and then you have. It's all bloodline related, of course, So then you have the Amud priesthood, and this is where they start just working out the kinks, figuring out the banking system. During this time, it's to get, you're obsessed with the underworld and, all of the little trinkets you got to buy, right? You got to have this little god and that god, and then, you got to get your cat mummified, right? All these things. And this is basically the start of this type of system, and so that's what makes Pharaoh Akhenaten important, because he was an insider. He was of the bloodline. He was like Justin Bieber. He was a huge teenage celebrity, right? And he wasn't expected to go out of line. Well, something happened where, his great aunt, I believe Queen Hatshepsut, was giving him this knowledge, and he was, he had sisters, and he was, surrounded by the pharaonic and the tradition of the matriarchal tradition, which was ancient Egypt's original rule, which is the female rule, and being in tune with the masculine and feminine, like all men were, right?
Yeah.
So which is important even today, like, think about how bombarded we are with everything that's going on. I mean, plus the whole, how the women are treated, like basically, and you may think that it's more equal or whatever now, and in a sense it is, but at the same time, the role of feminism was created by the CIA, destroyed the family, and and it's we're living in the craziest time. So even back then, they were already going to the Shemsu Hor, already manipulating the king rule, right? The warrior. See, now this is the era of the warrior king and the warrior rule, and I think this is what Queen Hatshepsut was worried about, and trying to impart the knowledge of matriarchal heresy to hierarchy to Akhenaten, who's still young. He's still young enough to get this, right? And for reward, she went on a camping trip and never returned. So eventually, the kid kind of woke up and was really like the first dude in history to put the money masters out of business.
Yeah, and I thought that was super interesting because you kind of draw this analogy, the same way that people claim JFK was our last real president before the secret societies really cemented their control and they haven't had to loosen their grip since. Yeah, it seems like there's sort of a parallel with Akhenaten and the way secret societies in Egypt, he was fighting them. And also when you talk to Egyptologists and you look back at Akhenaten and his memorials, it seems like in most cases his face has been scratched off and they've tried to kind of erase him from history.
Oh yeah, they tried. Yeah, almost did. We have very little of his record, and especially from the Amman period. There's enough, that makes it unique in all of the world's history. So yeah, they definitely try to get rid of him.
And there is a little speculation also that was done, and you've taught me that there's a good chance that it was done because of his policies and him fighting the secret cabal. But there's a lot of speculation out there that it was also due to him looking different, due to him being some type of hybrid or having an elongated skull and being maybe part alien, and that they wanted to cover that up as well. So
absolutely, because there's no art in history that shows that. Like literally nowhere in the world we have this.
Yeah.
Except his. Like he's painting showing his daughters, in their form with elongated skulls, right?
Yeah. So
that's some serious ish right there, man. So and
yeah, it's definitely interesting to think about, him being one of the first people to seriously fight back. And I wonder what was going on with this, this Shemsu Hor group, and if they were really a reptilian race, maybe they were blending their race with the pharaohs to kind of like engineer themselves in a different way. It's tough to know, but you've speculated that this reptilian group has somehow those reptilian traits, for the most part, at least in the physical sense, have been kind of weeded out genetically over the years, right?
Yeah, and I think that it's possible that what we know is the elongated skull, that might actually even be the reptilian skull.
Yeah.
That's a good one to think about, because who knows, right? But yeah, I think for sure that the physical traits, because you can read 1600s, 1700s, 1800s, they're fighting like reptilian dragons, and even Lord Byron, the famous poet, supposedly had like horns and head and reptilian features, right? So I think at this point, I think that's gone. Except if it exists, it'd be at a level that like above Rothschild level, like such an unknown elite that you wouldn't even know about it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can imagine, like there's more. There's got to be if the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and we're worried about them. Can you imagine who we're not worried about that we don't even know?
Yeah, man, it's trippy.
Absolutely, it's crazy.
And now another aspect of Egyptian culture that I never really got was mummification, and I guess I just always wrote it off as sort of a superstitious thing they did, but we give them so much credit for being advanced in other areas that it doesn't really make sense to just conclude that. And you've looked into this, and there seems to be more to it, doesn't there?
Yeah, the mummification is really weird. I mean, that's, to me, you don't mummify yourself. You don't. Why would you mummify your physical stuff if you're not expecting a physical return?
That's a good point.
I mean, that's kind of how I looked at it, right? I mean, you worry about the underworld and the other part and all that stuff, or that's what it doesn't even make sense. Like you're worried about returning in the physical realm, and you're making sure you're still there. And I think for those thoughts to exist and those type of beliefs, there has to have been some sort of cloning, or or knowledge of this type of understanding, because there's no other way to look at it. And plus, hybrid species, like there's all kinds of Even when you look at the famous light bulb, it's actually a serpent, and the other panels are taken. It's like little arms. They're assembling. It looks like they're making serpents.
Yeah.
Baby serpents, and they're assembling humans. I mean, it's insane, or hybriding. And some of the original I have in the books, some of the earliest like hieroglyphs and earliest Egyptian art talks about like weird hybrid winged creatures from the desert in Egypt and stuff. And these are from the Maspero collection, and these are very rare. And I actually have the books from the 1800s, and the plates in there, they're nuts.
Well, in the same way that transhumanists, the whole conspiracy today is that they're trying to transport their consciousness into computers to live forever. Maybe in ancient Egypt, there's a parallel with these reptilians resurrecting their consciousness in a human vessel to appear less frightening to the masses, yet still be insanely superior and being able to rule them without blowing their cover.
Yeah, that could be.
It's out there, man. And I don't know if you're familiar with Freeman Fly, but he's a conspiracy researcher, and he's got this little thread that he's gathered this evidence that seems to be mounting up, anecdotal evidence that seems to suggest that Obama could be a clone of Akhenaten, and he goes in for all his reasons why. But something that's interesting about Obama is now that his hair has gone gray, you notice he's got a huge scar on his head, and that's like, of all the vetting of a new president, you would think that a 4-inch, 5-inch scar on someone's head would come up, but it never did. And maybe they resurrected Akhenaten and then had to shrink that cranium down to human size.
Well, yeah, I talk about that in the book actually a little bit. I like Freeman. He's funny and he's original. He's a cool guy. But Akhenaten and Obama, that's a whole other issue. Like Queen Kai looks exactly like his wife. Mm-hmm. So it's freaky. I mean, I the whole scar on the head thing. I mean, is that photoshopped? Is that is double?
Right.
I mean, like, who knows? I mean, Obama, that guy. If he's one thing, he's a master CIA agent for sure. I mean, or he's Pharaoh Akhenaten recloned 5 different times. He could be like 5 different Akhenaten clones passing as a president.
Yeah,
it wouldn't take. Hey, let me tell you something, man. Like nothing surprises me anymore because I've gone so far down the rabbit hole that it's just like, okay, that.
I hear you. And dude, another fascinating story, a part of your book that I really loved was the examination of modern culture and these references to reptilian royalty. Of course, you mentioned G.I. Joe is always fighting Cobra Commander. Mario is always fighting Bowser and the King Koopa royal family. But the example that I found most fascinating in your book was the underlying threads in that 90s sitcom Dinosaurs. I think a lot of people would remember that show. But tell them about the subtext in that show.
Yeah, that blew my mind, man. Like that whole part, and I remember that show as a kid. It was a cool show. But when I watched it later on, I'm like, oh, okay, something else is going on here. That's basically talking about Jim Henson talking about the dinosaurs didn't actually all die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And here's the reptilian overlord. And what's crazy about it is Disney. Disney tried to get the Muppets control from him. He wouldn't sell it. So they let him create the dinosaur show, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he wouldn't give up control of Muppets. So then they just, hit him with the heart attack gun, and he died before the dinosaur show even aired.
Yes, I thought that was a fascinating thread.
Very interesting, and to the chagrin of his soul, wherever it may be, they got the rights to the Muppets anyway. So,
and Disney's behind a lot of creepiness. Yeah, it's crazy. The other aspect that was cool was the main family in Dinosaurs. They're the Sinclair family. And that is the name of one of the elite Illuminati supposed bloodlines is the Sinclairs or the St. Clairs. And It's also interesting that, anyone who's seen the Sinclair gas station has seen the dinosaur logo. That's their logo for the gas station. And we know that these secret societies, these elites, these bankers, they're involved in banking and they're involved in natural resources, mainly oil. So funny to see that connection.
Yeah, and their logo for the gas station is the big dinosaur.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, which I thought was great because I remember seeing that, thinking, "Wow, that's cool,"
Mm-hmm.
Because I've always been fascinated. Everyone is fascinated with dinosaurs, especially as a kid.
Hell yeah, man.
So
I grew up in this small little Missouri town, and there was really nothing going on in this little suburb, but there was a Sinclair station in the middle of the town. They had the dinosaur, you could go up and sit on it, and that was, I guess, the highlight of a kid's day.
I remember seeing those. I remember seeing those in California and stuff.
And who would...
Yeah, and it's weird that you don't see too many Sinclair gas stations anymore, do you now?
No. And who would have thought that years later I would be drawing the connection to the Sinclair gas station, to the show I was probably watching at the time, to elite families and throughout history that have been controlling the masses. My mind would have been blown if I had told myself that back then.
Yeah, that's why the eureka moment's never ending,
Yeah.
It's just continual, like, what?
The secular nature of time. But it is a fascinating tale and a great book. But I wanted to talk about a few pieces from your blog before I let you go, because we're getting kind of deep in the interview. But you've written some really interesting pieces that examine the idea of a couple major celebrities might have faked their deaths. And these kind of stories are always fun. But let's look at Elvis. I mean, that theory's been around for quite some time. I've always heard super fans suggesting that he might have faked his death. But what do you think, man? Is it possible? Is there enough evidence out there to make you wonder?
Yeah, the Elvis faking his own death thing kind of went viral, and I had to write a book about it, and it's coming out in December with David Childress, David Hatcher Childress, and the Unlimited Press.
Nice.
So they bought it. Yeah, it's cool, man. I'm stoked about it. So it's gonna be out for Christmas. And first of all, I didn't know anything about Elvis, really. He was more of the caricature of pop culture. Like the Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Like, that type of image to me. Like I think a lot of people have it, and especially this generation, because we're not even close. He died before I was born, so it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
So but to learn about Elvis, it was great, and it was so amazing. Like, he was the man for sure. Like, his story is incredible. But yeah, looking into all this conspiracy stuff and did he fake his own death, I think there's a 20% chance he actually pulled it off. For sure, there's enough weird things that don't make sense to allude to that he might have gotten away with it. However, if he's still alive or how long, who knows? But he definitely could have got away with it. And this is before the internet, so even Tupac. If you look at the Tupac death, right, there's a lot of weird stuff that alludes to maybe he even faked his own death as well, and that was before the internet as well, before it really got crazy. So it's possible.
Well, given...
Then you look into Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
And Michael Jackson, the ultimate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember where I was when I heard Michael Jackson died. And I couldn't even, believe it. I think it's one of those, everyone in the world was like, what? Let's check that out. To the point where I almost destroyed the internet,
Yeah. And
took the internet down.
And I wanted to talk to you about him a little bit too, but going back to Elvis, given what I've heard now from so many different researchers and looked into about MKUltra mind control and celebrities like Britney Spears and Miley Cyrus being these mentally fragmented victims of childhood abuse that are then thrown out there to the masses in a dance puppet dance kind of way and just used to siphon wealth. In that context, you look at Elvis and you're like, there is a guy who descended into madness in his later years in the same way, in the self-destructive way that some of these other celebrities do. And it makes you wonder if he wasn't one of the first test cases for mass success for these mind-controlled celebrities.
He was the prototype, but he wasn't himself a victim, in that regard. Like, he was in the army. Like he was blowing up. He came out of nowhere basically, and they weren't prepared.
Right.
Like they had never seen anything like that. And he was self-made. I mean, he didn't steal black culture, any of that. He was the real deal. Man, he was from Tulipo, Mississippi. He was poor as hell. And he was in Memphis as a teenager. Like literally, he walked across the street from the projects to watch B.B. King play the blues on Beale Street, right? I mean, he was the real deal. So, when he was in the Army, that's, they always make the case, well, okay, they could have broken him down there or introduced him to those mind control techniques, which they were just starting out with in the time, in the 50s, right? But there's no real evidence to see any of that other than he was introduced to amphetamines to keep him awake. Now, that's one part of it. The other part is that his mother had just died. Now, we all know through the Illuminati and the satanic rituals, stuff like that, the sacrifices and this and that,
Yep.
However, if it was sacrifice or if it happens naturally, they latch onto this and they use this as a tool, right? So his mental state definitely was right for the picking with definitely his mother and being introduced to amphetamines and being in the Army. But I really don't see anything that they might have tried to certain, maybe to get with him, but he was real. Like he forego all of, because they wanted to do was get him in there and do USO tours and just like, get a bunch of free stuff. Mm-hmm. And to his credit and to the managerial genius of the colonel, he was like, nope, he's going to be a grunt like everybody else. Which was smart because that gave him the respect of the older people, right?
Right.
So now he returns and, he's Frank Sinatra, coming home and he's doing like singing ballads and doing movies and he blew up. But the whole thing is later on, it was the drug abuse. It was the pills basically because creative people on themselves have trouble sleeping, right?
Yep.
So imagine, mass success, fame, movies, concerts, back-to-back concerts, doing, you can't sleep. And like the adrenaline, the whole thing that's going around, it becomes, it's just too much. So you kind of require the aid of sleeping pills and so these things. And his point, he just became so, dependent on these drugs and then doing, he was like an expert, he was like pharmaceutical, walking pharmaceutical company, basically he killed himself into oblivion in his mental state, of course, deteriorates, but at the same time, he was a seeker, he was reading, he was one of us, man. This is what blew my mind the most about Elvis, right? To learn all this and to know that he was like me, like in the sense where, he was reading all the stuff that I've read. Like he was, when Shirley MacLaine interviewed me, it was amazing because she was one of the first to kind of go out on a limb and talk about these, these sort of crazy topics and from such a high position,
Mm-hmm. So
for Elvis to reading the travels of Kirshner Moody while he's been having to go read this crappy like lions from Clambake, it's just like, whoa, dude. So he was a seeker, man.
That's cool, man. And you mentioned Michael Jackson, and that's another crazy case. And a lot of people speculate that he might have faked his death. And it's also...
Well, here's the thing. Michael Jackson was 100% convinced Elvis faked his own death.
Yes. And he also apparently...
He told his wife... Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say he supposedly was married to Elvis's daughter, which is an interesting connection because they're such moguls. But your article seems to suggest that might have been a faked marriage or an arranged marriage or something. But it's a strange connection.
He was just trying to get absolutely. He was just trying to get some knowledge. He was trying to figure out. He was obsessed with Elvis, so the idea of marrying his daughter was trying to get this information. I'm sure, and then probably. Maybe get some good media. It kind of backfired. It didn't work like the way we thought it was going to work, but at least there was one good song out of it. You're Not Alone, fantastic. So if there was one person who could fake their own death, it would be Elvis and Michael Jackson. I mean, who knows? Maybe Michael did. You got to think about it. Like he faked his own death to get out of this, this hellish. Contract and all the, Michael Jackson was real. He knew all about the game, like with the Illuminati music industry, the Zionist control,
Mm-hmm.
He even had, like, they don't care about us. Like, how more plainly can you get? Like, he they tried to destroy him many times with the child, case and everything else. So he definitely had a reason to take his own death as well,
Right.
And it's kind of funny that the IRS, just last month, hit his estate with a $700 million tax.
I know. I saw that too.
So they're like, you take your own death, but you want to take this, buddy, So, why? Come on, man. That's nuts. $700 million. What do they know,
Mm-hmm. And another interesting parallel was that Elvis's funeral was only just a day after his death. Michael Jackson's was pretty close after his death, and both staffs were fired before their death.
Yep. Yeah, everything basically happened to Elvis. The weird scenarios happened with Michael Jackson as well. It's totally strange.
Yeah.
And with the Elvis, it's the 900-pound, copper coffin that they somehow put together in a day, and they got him there, and everyone said it had air conditioning, and it was cool, and the body was like a wax stubble that didn't look didn't look like the Elvis looked, it was 50 pounds overweight and everything, and the sideburns were falling off. It looked like it was melting.
It's trippy, man.
So yeah, crazy.
And in the case of Michael Jackson, there's a shot of the stretcher, and it looks like the body on the stretcher moves, and it's like, what happened there?
The helicopter. Yeah. That's exactly. Like, what is going on? But we shouldn't even be surprised. Look at 9/11. They reported, in BBC, Tower 7 fell 15 minutes before it did or so.
Right. We see these mistakes happening time and time again. We see the same approach to control and the same mistakes happening, yet so many people are still in such denial. But, we're looking back at one of the first secret societies of Egypt, and now we're bringing it up to 9/11. It seems like this control grid might be the same as it always has been, and it might have started with this crazy serpent cult.
Yeah, and it's funny, the famous quote, "Nothing is new under the sun."
Mm-hmm.
That's the Akhenaten quote.
So, it's trippy, man.
Think about how deep that is.
Yeah. Well, man, I never gave much thought to the parallels between Elvis and Michael Jackson until your articles, and how weird it is that Michael Jackson, at least on the surface, married Elvis's daughter. But man, it is great stuff. It's awesome that you are going to be turning that content into a full-on book. And I love how you aren't pigeonholing yourself.
Get a copy.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I just go with the flow, and, some catches me, some sounds interesting. I'm into so many different things that, there's always something fresh in,
Absolutely.
And there's always some weird stuff. Every time I look into it, it's like, wait a minute, and I happen to be a good researcher, so I might as well just, put that to good use.
See, I'm lazy, man. I love the different content, but I don't do the research. I sit here and I talk to people like you do the research, and then when I get sick of Egypt, I talk about MK Ultra, and then when I'm sick of that, we talk about cryptids or Bigfoot. So it's great that
you got the easy job, man. You get to talk to people, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's great that you're out there, man. I love that you're tackling all this radically different stuff. It makes shows like this one fun. But before we go, would you like to tell the people about your blog or your book or anything else you have coming up?
Oh, yeah. You could. My blog spot is xavianthaze.blogspot.com. That's where you can find all the cool articles and different essays, all free, of course. I have an online metaphysical library if you want to, read about MK Ultra or ancient Indian texts or any type of, metaphysical, esoteric history books, UFO stuff. There's a bunch of ebooks there, video interviews and lectures. It's all free too at xaviantvision.com. And I'm on Facebook. Add me on Facebook. Ask me a question. The Elvis book is coming out around Christmas, and I have a novel on Errol Flynn who's coming out in, I think, a couple months. So always busy.
Right on, man. Well, it's been great talking to you. But thanks for coming on the show, man. The book has been awesome. Aliens in Ancient Egypt, The Brotherhood of the Serpent, and the Secrets of the Nile Civilization. I definitely recommend it. And, yeah, man, take care of yourself out there.
Thank you for having me on. Thanks for reading, and I look forward to talking to you again.
There we have it, folks. Back in the saddle, another one in the bag, and I hope you enjoyed that. I wish Xaviant had a slightly better microphone, but we made it work. Please consider donating if you enjoy the show. I'm determined not to change the way I do things, but I'm starting to have a little bit of a struggle. You can see how much I take in by the money bombs, and $400 or $500 a month really isn't enough. But let's share the show, tell your friends, rise to the top of the conspiratorial charts, and I'm sure it'll all be okay in the end. Thanks for sticking with me on this ride, folks. You're the best there is, and I'll see you next week. Your move, Elvis.